More than 3,000 Canadian Pacific rail workers are off the job following failed bargaining talks over wages, pensions, and work conditions, raising major concerns of the potential economic fallout. The work stoppage is already disrupting supply chains that are strained by high inflation, war in Europe, natural disasters, namely the floods in BC, and the ongoing global pandemic. Railway workers represented by the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference and CP Rail are blaming each other for the disruption. So can Canada afford another major supply chain disruption? And with the House back in session, will the feds intervene and bring in back-to-work legislation? Let's bring in Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan, and he'll answer all our questions. Welcome to Power Play, Minister. You said the best deals are reached at the negotiating table, but how long does this work stoppage go on before you bring back-to-work legislation?
Well, I wouldn't raise back-to-work legislation very flippantly because, in effect, what that means is you're taking away the rights of workers. And that is something you got to be very careful about doing. And there's bars set in this country, because it's codified in the Charter and in the Canada Labour Code. The courts basically say, look, you've got to show that there are immediate consequences, that there are prolonged consequences, that it, goes against the national interest, and that the parties aren't at the table doing what they need to do to get a deal. That is not the case here. They haven't left the table. They are in the weeds of it. They are, moving this along. I am, here in Calgary, basically to remind them as well, I think of the best interests of Canadians, which is we want a deal now. This cannot be prolonged. And so what you said in your introduction about Canada not being able to afford another interruption to the supply chains in this country, you're absolutely right. It can't. This couldn't happen at a worse time. Yeah.
So you said, Minister, the negotiations are ongoing. What can you tell us about those negotiations? Because at the beginning of this weekend, they were at odds. So are they getting a little closer? Is this going well? Are you seeing a light at the end of the tunnel?
I always say I choose to be optimistic. They are moving this along. They're plugging away at it. Nobody's left the table. You never take that for granted, by the way, that they remain at the table. That in itself is of significance. So, they're both there. They're both working away at it. I would acknowledge that, certainly externally there have been bumps in the road and some challenging times. But they continue to push along. I commend them both for it. And, we have a very able team, I have to say, that I inherited in the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service who are helping them along. This is, it is both, let me tell you, an art and a science.
Okay, I have very little time left. I know you're optimistic and you want to stay optimistic. So how close is this, or how far are they? Can you give the Canadian people that are listening to us now an idea of what is going on at that table?
Well, here's the thing. I've learned that anything that I could say outside of the negotiating room has an effect on the negotiating room. And I am singularly focused on getting the deal. The deal is what will help workers and supply chains in this country. So that's where I remain focused. I can assure you, Joyce, and anybody who's watching, that we remain fixated on that. And I'm here basically representing the interests of most Canadians, which is we want this deal done. We want it done now. People have had enough. As I've said before, we have a saying in Newfoundland, my nerves are rubbed raw. And I think considering everything that Canadians have been through over the past couple of years, their nerves are rubbed raw. This is not the time.
Well, at least they're still at the negotiating table. Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan, thanks for talking to us and spending this time with us.
Thanks, Joyce.